3 years. 3 years of hiding, and they still see nothing but someone to mock. Mama, I don't know how much longer I can do this.
Young master.
You cannot be serious.
She is.
She is just the...
Finish that sentence. I dare you.
Sir, please. I can't. I'm not supposed to. You're not supposed to what?
Hide.
Why does the boss keep someone like HER in his kitchen?
Maybe he needs someone to test if the food is poisoned first. That's all she's good for.
The knife slipped. Blood hit the cutting board before Tandy even felt the sting. She grabbed a towel, pressed it hard against her palm, and kept her eyes down because crying in this kitchen meant questions, and questions meant attention, and attention in the Kang compound meant death. She was nobody, a ghost who cooked for ghosts. The kind of woman powerful men looked through on their way to important rooms. But tonight, the most dangerous man in Seoul was about to look directly at her. And when Kang Min-ho pulled her from the shadows and sat her at the head of his table in front of every underboss, every rival, every person who had ever underestimated her, the entire room would understand what she had spent 3 years trying to hide. She was never invisible. She was surviving. And survival in the world of the Korean Mafia is the most dangerous thing a woman can be. If you have ever felt unseen, overlooked, dismissed because of how you look or where you come from, this story is for you. Welcome to a place where black women are not background characters. Welcome to a place where curves are power, and softness is strength. And the most feared man in Asia will burn his empire to the ground for one woman who never asked him to. Hit subscribe right now, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about love, power, and what it means to be chosen. Let us begin. Seoul in winter is a cruel city. The cold does not care about your story. It does not care that you came here running from something. It does not care that you have nowhere else to go. It simply exists, sharp and indifferent, and you either survive it or you do not. Tandy Mulf had been surviving for 3 years. She stood at the kitchen window of the Kang compound, watching snow fall over the courtyard garden. The kitchen was warm, filled with the smell of doenjang jaegiji simmering on the back burner and the soft hiss of rice in the cooker. It was 4 in the morning. The house was silent except for the occasional footstep of a guard changing position somewhere in the halls above. This was her favorite time. The hours before the compound woke, before the men in dark suits filled the dining room, before the tension that lived in every corner of this house became impossible to ignore. In these quiet hours, the kitchen belonged to her. She turned from the window and moved back to her station. The vegetables for breakfast were already prepped, lined up in small bowls the way she had learned to do it in culinary school back in Johannesburg, a lifetime ago, before her father's debts, before the men who came to collect, before she understood that some prices cannot be paid in money. The bandage on her palm was fresh. She had changed it twice since cutting herself the night before. The wound was not deep, but it was in an awkward place, right across the pad below her thumb, and it made gripping a knife uncomfortable. She would manage. She always managed. The kitchen door opened behind her. Tandy did not turn around. She knew every footstep in this house by now. The heavy tread of the security chief, Mr. Park. The quick, efficient steps of the housekeeping staff. The near-silent movement of the men who worked directly for the family. This footstep was different, measured, Blasian. The sound of someone who had learned a long time ago that rushing was for people who had something to prove. She kept her eyes on the cutting board and continued slicing green onions, thin and even, the way she had been taught. The footsteps stopped somewhere behind her, near the door. She could feel someone watching her. It was not the first time. Men watched her sometimes, the guards, the drivers, the endless stream of associates who moved through the compound for meetings she was not supposed to know about. She had learned to make herself uninteresting, plain uniform, hair pulled back, no makeup, eyes down, quiet. Most of them lost interest quickly enough. This one did not leave. Tandy finished the green onions and moved them to a small bowl. She reached for the garlic, began peeling, kept her breathing steady. A chair scraped against the floor. Someone sat down at the small table in the corner of the kitchen, the one the staff used for quick meals between service. She heard the soft click of a phone being set down on wood. Still, she did not turn around. The minutes stretched. Tandy worked through the garlic, then the ginger, then began preparing the marinade for the meat. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory carrying her through each step while her mind tracked the presence behind her. He was still there, sitting, watching, not speaking. She finished the marinade and covered the bowl, wiped down her station, checked the rice cooker, adjusted the flame under the stew. She was running out of tasks that did not require her to turn around. Finally, she did. The man sitting at the corner table was not a guard. He was not a driver. He was not one of the endless associates in dark suits. He was Kang Min-ho. Tandy had seen him exactly 4 times in 3 years. Once from a distance, crossing the courtyard. Once through a doorway, his back to her as he spoke with someone in the main hall. Once in a photograph on the wall of the formal dining room, younger, standing beside a woman who must have been his mother. And once 3 months ago, late at night, when she had stepped into the hallway at the wrong moment and found him standing at the window, looking out at nothing, with an expression on his face that she had immediately looked away from because it was not meant for anyone to see. He was not looking at nothing now. He was looking directly at her. She bowed quickly, the automatic gesture drilled into her during her first week at the compound. She kept her eyes low, her hands clasped in front of her, every line of her body communicating the appropriate deference. Sir. She spoke in Korean. Her accent was still imperfect, but 3 years of immersion had smoothed the roughest edges. I apologize. I did not realize you were here. Can I prepare something for you? He did not answer immediately. She risked a glance upward. He was leaning back in the chair, one arm resting on the table, his phone beside him. He was wearing a dark sweater and trousers, no jacket, which meant he had come from somewhere inside the house rather than outside. His face was difficult to read. Not cold exactly, but closed, the way a door is closed when someone has decided not to open it. What happened to your hand? He said. His voice was lower than she had expected. Quiet. The kind of quiet that made you lean in to hear it, which meant you were already closer than you intended to be before you realized it. Tandy looked down at her bandaged palm. A small accident, she said. It is nothing. He looked at the bandage for a moment longer, then back at her face. His eyes were dark, sharp, the kind that seemed to be cataloging information without revealing what conclusions he was drawing. You are the South African, he said. Yes, sir. He nodded once, slowly, like he was confirming something he already knew. How long have you worked here? 3 years, sir? This month? She watched something shift in his expression, too subtle to name. 3 years, he repeated. And I do not know your name. Tandy felt her pulse quicken, though she kept her face calm. It was not a question. It was a statement. He was telling her that he had noticed something, and the noticing itself was significant. Tandy, she said. Tandy Molf. Tandy, he said, and the way he pronounced it was careful, respectful of the sounds, not flattening them the way most Korean speakers did with foreign names. It means love. Unzula. She blinked. Yes, it does. He looked at her for another long moment. Then he stood, picked up his phone, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he paused. The jjigi, he said. It smells different than what the other cooks make. Tandy hesitated. I add something, she said. A spice from home. I hope it is acceptable. He did not turn around. It is, he said. And then he was gone, his footsteps fading down the corridor, leaving nothing behind but the memory of his eyes and the strange, unsettled feeling in her chest. The compound woke at 6. Tandy served breakfast the way she always did, moving between the kitchen and the staff dining room, keeping her head down, staying out of the way of the more senior household members. The family ate separately, in the formal dining room, and she had never served them directly. That privilege belonged to the head cook, Mrs. Yoon, a woman in her 60s who had worked for the Kang family for over 30 years and who treated Tandy with the particular coldness reserved for outsiders who had not yet proven their worth. Tandy had stopped trying to prove her worth to Mrs. Yoon a long time ago. She simply did her work, kept the kitchen running smoothly, and stayed invisible. It was safer that way. After breakfast, she had 2 hours before she needed to begin lunch prep. She used the time the way she always did, walking the perimeter of the compound's inner garden, breathing cold air, trying to remember what it felt like to exist in a space that did not belong to someone else. The Kang compound was beautiful in a severe way. Traditional architecture, clean lines, snow collecting on the curved edges of the rooftops. It looked like something from a historical drama, except for the security cameras mounted at every corner and the men with earpieces who patrolled the grounds at regular intervals. Tandy understood what this place was. She had understood from the first week when she saw a man escorted through the back gate with blood on his shirt and terror in his eyes, and no one around her reacted at all. The Kang family controlled the largest criminal organization in Seoul. Import, export, real estate, entertainment. The legitimate businesses were fronts for the other things. The things that happened in the basement levels of buildings Tandy had never seen and never wanted to see. She did not know the details. She had made a point of not knowing. The less she knew, the less dangerous she was. She was here because she had needed to disappear. And the people who had helped her disappear had connections to people who had connections to Mrs. Yoon, who had needed a cook who could work long hours and ask no questions. It was not a good life, but it was a life. And after everything that had happened in Johannesburg, that was enough. She found her usual spot on a stone bench near the koi pond and sat down. The cold seeped through her coat, but she did not mind. Cold was simple. Cold was honest. It did not pretend to be something it was not. She thought about Kang Min-ho sitting in her kitchen at 4 in the morning, basking about her hand, saying her name like he was committing it to memory. She should not think about it. It meant nothing. A man like him spoke to hundreds of people every week. He had probably already forgotten she existed. But her name had sounded different in his voice. Tande. Like he understood that names were important. Like he understood that a name could carry the weight of everything a person was and everything they had lost. She closed her eyes and told herself to forget about it. A week passed, then 2. Tandy saw Kang Min-ho 3 more times, always at a distance, always surrounded by men in dark suits, always moving through the compound with the particular energy of someone who had too much to do and not enough hours to do it in. He did not come to the kitchen again. He did not speak to her. He did not look at her. She told herself she was relieved. The 3rd week, everything changed. It started with the dinner. A formal event, the kind that happened several times a year, when the heads of allied families gathered at the compound to discuss business and demonstrate loyalty and engage in the complicated theater of power that Tandy did not fully understand but had learned to navigate around. Mrs. Yoon had been planning the menu for weeks. 8 courses. Traditional Korean dishes. Elevated, refined. The kind of food that communicated wealth and taste and the absolute confidence of people who had never doubted their place in the world. Tandy's job was to handle the dessert course. Mrs. Yoon had made it clear that this was a test. If Tandy performed well, she might be allowed to handle more significant dishes in the future. If she failed, she would be reminded, in ways both subtle and overt, that she was still an outsider who should be grateful for the opportunity to work in this kitchen at all. Tandy did not intend to fail. She spent 3 days perfecting the recipe. Bingsu, traditional Korean shaved ice, but reimagined. She added flavors from home. Huoibush, amarula, a hint of something unexpected that she knew would make people stop and pay attention. She tested it a dozen times, adjusting the ratios, refining the presentation, until it was exactly right. The night of the dinner, she worked in focused silence while the rest of the kitchen buzzed around her. 7 courses went out. 7 courses came back empty. the highest compliment in this world of unspoken judgments and silent evaluations. Then it was time for dessert. Tandy plated each serving herself. 12 portions arranged on a long tray, each one identical, each one perfect. She handed the tray to the server who would carry it to the formal dining room, and then she stepped back and waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. The server returned. The tray was empty except for one portion which had been set aside. Tandy's heart sank. Someone had not touched their dessert. That was a message, a deliberate communication of displeasure that would be noted by everyone in the room. She looked at Mrs. Yoon, expecting the older woman's expression to confirm her failure. But Mrs. Yoon was staring at the server with an expression Tandy had never seen before. Something between confusion and alarm. "What is it?" Tandy asked. The server cleared her throat. "The young master," she said. "He wants to speak with the person who made the dessert." Mrs. Yoon's face went pale. Tandy felt her own pulse quicken. "The young master," Mrs. Yoon repeated. "Kang Min-ho?" "Yes," the server said. "He asks specifically. He wants the cook brought to the dining room." Mrs. Yoon looked at Tandy. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Mrs. Yoon straightened her shoulders and said, "Go! Now! Do not make him wait." Tandy walked through the corridors of the compound, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain the guards could hear it. The formal dining room was on the other side of the main building, past the central courtyard, through a series of doors that she had never been permitted to enter. She had imagined this room. She had never thought she would see it. The doors opened, and she stepped inside. The room was larger than she expected. A long table ran down the center, surrounded by 12 men in expensive suits, each one radiating the particular combination of power and danger that marked them as players in a game Tandy did not fully understand. At the head of the table, facing the door, sat Kang Min-ho. He was watching her. The conversation in the room had stopped the moment she entered. 12 pairs of eyes turned toward her, assessing, judging, categorizing. She felt the weight of their attention like a physical pressure, pushing her backward toward the door. But she did not move. She stood her ground and kept her eyes on the floor, the way she had been taught, the way that was expected. "Sir," she said, "you asked for me." Silence. Then Kang Min-ho spoke. "Look at me," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the room like a command. She looked up. He was holding the portion of bingsu that had been set aside. He had not touched it. "This," he said. "You made this." "Yes, sir." He looked at the bingsu, then back at her. "Tell me what is in it," she told him. The huibus, the amarula, the technique she had used to achieve the texture. The reasoning behind each element, how they balanced, how they complemented each other, how they told a story that was both Korean and something else entirely. She spoke for 2 minutes. Maybe 3. When she finished, the room was still silent. Kang Min-ho set down the spoon. He stood up. Every man at the table went very still. He walked the length of the room, past the seated guests, past the guards stationed near the walls, until he stood directly in front of her. Tandy did not move. She did not look away. He was taller than she remembered, broader in the shoulders. Up close, she could see the details she had missed before. A small scar near his left eyebrow, the precise cut of his hair, the way his eyes seemed to hold something back, some weight or memory that he carried alone. "You are wasted in the kitchen," he said quietly. And then, louder, so everyone in the room could hear, "This woman will sit at my table." The silence that followed was absolute. Tandy felt the blood drain from her face. "Sir, I cannot. It would not be appropriate. I am not asking," he said, and his eyes held hers, steady, unblinking. "I am telling you. Sit." He turned and walked back to the head of the table. One of the men sitting to his right, an older man with silver hair and a face like carved stone, began to rise from his chair. Kang Min-ho looked at him. The man sat back down. The seat immediately to his left was empty. He gestured toward it. Tandy walked forward. She felt every eye in the room tracking her movement. She was aware of her plain uniform, her simple pulled-back hair, the calluses on her hands from years of kitchen work. She was aware of the curves of her body, the fullness of her hips and chest, all the things that made her different from the slender, elegant women who usually occupied spaces like this. She sat down. Kang Min-ho picked up his spoon and took a bite of the bingsu. He chewed slowly, deliberately. Then he nodded once. "Perfect," he said, and he looked at her with something in his eyes that she could not quite name. The dinner continued. The conversation resumed. But everything had changed, and everyone in that room knew it. Tandy Mulf was no longer invisible. Now listen. If this story is already making your heart beat faster, if you are already wondering what happens next, you need to be part of this journey from the beginning. Hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on the notification bell. Because what is coming next is going to make everything you just watched look like a warm-up. We are just getting started, and trust me, you do not want to miss what Kang Min-ho does when he realizes exactly how much this woman has been hiding. The story continues in 3, 2, 1. The morning after the dinner, the whispers began. Tandy heard them before she even reached the kitchen. Low voices, cut off abruptly when she appeared in doorways, eyes that slid away from hers when she tried to meet them. The staff had always treated her with a certain distance, the natural wariness reserved for outsiders, but this was different. This was something colder. She ignored it and began her prep work. Mrs. Yoon arrived an hour later. She said nothing to Tandy, but the older woman's silence was its own kind of communication, disapproval, warning. Tandy kept her head down and focused on her tasks. At 10 in the morning, a young woman from the household staff appeared in the kitchen doorway. She was carrying a garment bag. "Miss Mulf," she said. Her voice was carefully neutral. "The young master requests your presence at lunch today. He has sent appropriate attire." Tandy looked at the garment bag. She looked at Mrs. Yoon, whose expression had gone completely blank. She took the bag and said, "Thank you." The dress inside was black, simple, elegant. It was her exact size, which meant someone had been paying attention to details she had thought no one noticed. The fabric was expensive, the kind of material that felt like water against skin. She put it on in the small room she used for changing when she worked late. She looked at herself in the mirror that hung on the back of the door. The woman looking back at her was not a kitchen worker. She was someone else entirely, someone she had not been allowed to be in a very long time. The lunch was held in a private dining room on the second floor. Just Kang Min-ho and 2 of his lieutenants, young men with sharp eyes and the careful posture of people who spent their lives anticipating danger. Tandy served herself from the dishes set out on the table. She ate sparingly, uncertain of the protocols, uncertain of everything. Kang Min-ho sat across from her, eating in silence, occasionally asking one of his lieutenants a question about schedules or logistics. He did not explain why she was there. He did not ask her questions. He simply ate and talked business and let her exist in the space as if her presence were the most natural thing in the world. When the meal ended, he looked at her. "Tomorrow," he said. "Same time. Wear the blue one." She did not know what the blue one was. But when she returned to her room that evening, she found another garment bag waiting on her bed. The blue one was stunning. This became the pattern, lunch every day. Sometimes dinner. Always the clothes appearing in advance, always perfectly fitted, always chosen with a care that suggested someone understood not just her measurements but her taste. Rich colors that complemented her dark skin. Cuts that did not hide her curves but celebrated them. Fabrics that moved with her body instead of against it. Tandy wore them because she was told to, but increasingly she wore them because she wanted to. Because for the first time in 3 years, she felt like herself again. The other staff stopped speaking to her entirely. She was no longer one of them, but she was not one of the family either. She existed in a strange middle space, neither servant nor guest, seen but not understood. Only Kang Min-ho seemed to know exactly what she was, and he was not telling anyone. 3 weeks after the dinner, he spoke to her directly for the first time since that night. They were alone in the private dining room. His lieutenants had been dismissed. The dishes had been cleared. Outside, snow was falling again, soft and silent. "Tell me about Johannesburg," he said. Tandy set down her chopsticks. She looked at him across the table, trying to read his expression, trying to understand what he already knew. "What would you like to know?" she asked carefully. "Everything," he said. And his voice was quiet, but there was something underneath it, something that sounded almost like concern. She told him. She told him about her father's restaurant, the one that had been in her family for 2 generations. She told him about the debts her father had hidden, the men who came to collect, the night when everything had gone wrong. She told him about running, about the people who had helped her disappear, about the price she had paid for a new identity and safe passage to a country where no one would think to look for her. She did not tell him about the scars on her back, the ones hidden beneath her clothes. She did not tell him about the things that had been done to her in the weeks before she escaped. Some stories were too heavy to give away at once. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "The men who hurt you. Do you know their names?" She hesitated. "Some of them." He nodded. His expression had not changed, but something in the room felt different, heavier, more charged. "Thank you for telling me," he said. And that was all. But later that night, alone in her room, Tandy thought about the way he had asked. "Do you know their names?" Not asked like casual curiosity. Asked like inventory. Asked like someone taking notes for future reference. She wondered what that meant. She told herself it meant nothing. She was wrong. A month passed. Then too, Tandy's role in the household shifted without ever being formally defined. She still cooked, but less frequently. She still lived in the staff quarters, but she was no longer expected to follow staff schedules. She attended lunches and dinners with Kang Min-ho, sometimes alone, sometimes with his business associates, always in the clothes that appeared for her each morning like silent gifts. She learned things about him, small things. He drank his coffee black but added sugar when he thought no one was looking. He read philosophy books late at night, dog-eared paperbacks in multiple languages stacked on his desk. He had a sister, younger, who lived abroad, whose name was mentioned only in hushed tones and never in his presence. He was 34 years old and had been running his family's organization since his father's death 6 years ago. He had never married. He had never, as far as anyone knew, been seriously involved with anyone. The staff whispered that he was cold, that he felt nothing, that the warmth had been burned out of him somewhere along the way, leaving only the sharp, efficient machine that kept the Kang Empire running. Tandy did not think he was cold. She thought he was careful. There was a difference. She also thought, increasingly, that the way he looked at her was not the way a man looks at a useful employee. But she did not let herself examine that thought too closely. It was too dangerous. He was too dangerous. And she had learned a long time ago that hoping for things only made losing them hurt more. The night everything changed again, it was raining. Tandy was in the kitchen, late, working on a recipe she had been perfecting for weeks. The main house was quiet. Most of the staff had retired. The guards moved through their rotations with the mechanical precision of men who had done the same thing 1,000 times before. She did not hear the door open behind her. She did not know anyone else was in the room until she turned around and found Kang Min-ho standing 3 feet away, watching her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. There was blood on his shirt. His knuckles were split. He looked like a man who had just come from a fight, which meant he probably had. "Sir," she said, her voice rising with alarm. "You are hurt. Let me help you." She moved toward him without thinking, reaching for a clean cloth, reaching for the first aid kit she kept in the lower cabinet, reaching for anything that would let her do something useful, instead of standing there staring at the blood soaking through expensive fabric. He caught her wrist. His grip was firm but not painful. Warm. His hand wrapped almost entirely around her arm. "I am not hurt," he said. "It is not my blood." She looked at his face. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but something was moving behind them, some emotion he was fighting to control. "Then whose blood is it?" she asked. He did not answer. She waited. Finally, he said, there was a man in Johannesburg. He had information I needed. He was not cooperative. Tandy felt her breath catch. He ran a business, Kang Min-ho continued. The kind that trades in people. The kind that your father owed money to. He looked at her. The kind that hurt you before you left. She could not speak. Her throat had closed around the words. He is no longer in business, Kang Min-ho said quietly. He is no longer anything. She stared at him. I told you I would find out their names, he said. Did you think I was making conversation? And in that moment, standing in her kitchen at midnight, with blood on his shirt and her wrist still held gently in his hand, Tandy understood exactly what kind of man Kang Min-ho was. He was the kind of man who listened, the kind who remembered, the kind who, when someone hurt something that belonged to him, did not forget and did not forgive. And somewhere along the way, without either of them saying it out loud, she had become something that belonged to him. She should have been afraid. She was not afraid. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers brushing against the hard line of his jaw. Thank you, she said. He closed his eyes. His hand released her wrist and moved to her hip, pulling her closer. His forehead pressed against hers. They stood like that, breathing together, not speaking, the rain falling steadily outside. Tandy, he said, her name in his mouth, like a prayer, like a promise. She kissed him. His response was immediate. His hands moved to her waist, lifting her, setting her on the counter behind her. His mouth found hers again, and the kiss deepened, full of everything neither of them had said for months. All the watching and waiting and wanting released in a single moment. She wrapped her arms around his neck. She felt his hands on her back, on her hips, tracing the curves of her body like he was memorizing her. She felt the heat of him, the barely controlled intensity, the way he kissed her like she was the first thing he had wanted in a very long time. And then he stopped. He pulled back just far enough to look at her. His breathing was ragged. His eyes were dark with desire, but there was something else there too. Something that looked almost like fear. I need you to understand something, he said. She waited. If this happens, he said, I will not be able to let you go. I am not built that way. I do not know how to want something a little bit. With you, it will be everything or nothing. I will protect you. I will provide for you. I will destroy anyone who tries to take you from me. But I will also consume you. That is who I am. She looked at him, at the blood still drying on his shirt, at the scars on his knuckles, at the weight in his eyes that came from years of being a man other men feared. She thought about the life she had been living, the hiding, the shrinking, the making herself small enough to fit into the spaces other people allowed her to occupy. She thought about what it might feel like to be chosen, fully, completely, by someone who saw exactly what she was and wanted her anyway. Good, she said, and she pulled him back down to her. The rest of that night belonged to them alone. But I am going to pause right here, because what happens after this moment changes both of their lives forever. New enemies, new dangers. A revelation about Tandy's past that threatens to destroy everything they have built. And a choice that Kang Min-ho makes that will shake the foundation of his empire. If you want to see how this love story fights its way through fire and comes out stronger on the other side, you absolutely must subscribe to this channel right now. Turn on the notification bell. Trust me, you are not ready for what is coming. Do it now. I will wait. The morning light came through the window like an accusation. Tandy woke slowly, aware first of warmth, then of weight, then of the arm draped across her waist. She opened her eyes and found herself in a room she did not recognize. Large, minimalist, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the compound's inner garden. The sheets beneath her were softer than anything she had ever slept on. She turned her head and found Kang Min-ho watching her. He was propped up on one elbow, his dark hair falling slightly across his forehead, his expression unguarded in a way she had never seen before. The hardness that usually lived in his face was gone. In its place was something quieter, something almost tender. You are thinking too loud, he said. His voice was rough with sleep. I can hear it from here. She smiled despite herself. I am thinking about what happens now. He reached out and traced the line of her jaw with his thumb. Now, he said, you stop hiding in kitchens. Now you stay where I can see you. Now everything changes. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to sink into the certainty in his voice and let it carry her. But she had learned a long time ago that wanting things did not make them true. Your people, she said carefully, they will not accept this. My people, he said, will accept what I tell them to accept. She shook her head. It is not that simple. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. Nothing about you has been simple from the moment I first saw you, he said. But simple is boring. I do not want simple. I want you. He kissed her before she could argue. And for a while, she let herself forget all the reasons this could not work. The whispers became louder. Tandy had expected resistance. She had not expected the scale of it. Within a week, the entire compound knew. The kitchen staff, who had once ignored her now, looked at her with open hostility. The guards, who had once nodded politely, now stared through her like she did not exist. Even Mrs. Yoon, who had maintained a careful neutrality for 3 years, refused to meet her eyes. But the real opposition came from above. Kang Min-ho had a council. 5 men, all of them older, all of them veterans of his father's era. They handled the organization's major decisions, the territorial agreements, the business partnerships, the delicate balance of power that kept Seoul's underworld from erupting into open war. They had served the Kang family for decades. They considered themselves guardians of its legacy, and they did not approve of Tandy. She learned this 3 days after that first night, when she walked into Minho's private study and found him standing at the window, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice sharp with anger. I do not care what they think is appropriate, he said into the phone. I do not answer to them. They answer to me. A pause. His jaw tightened. Then let them call a meeting, he said. I will be there. And I will bring her with me. He ended the call and turned to find her watching him from the doorway. Trouble, she said. It was not a question. The council, he said. They have concerns. About me. He crossed the room and took her hands in his. About us. About what it means for the family. About whether a woman they do not know can be trusted with access to our operations. She looked down at their joined hands. His were larger, rougher, scarred across the knuckles. Hers were calloused from years of kitchen work. Neither of them had soft hands. Neither of them had lived soft lives. Maybe they are right, she said quietly. Maybe I am a liability. He lifted her chin with his finger, forcing her to meet his eyes. You are not a liability, he said. You are the only thing in this entire organization that belongs to me by choice. Everyone else is here because of blood or money or fear. You are here because you chose to be. That makes you more valuable than all of them combined. She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that choice was a luxury, that circumstances had forced her into this life, that she had not chosen anything. Not really. But looking into his eyes, she realized it was not entirely true. She had chosen to stay when she could have run. She had chosen to trust him when trust was dangerous. She had chosen to let him in when letting anyone in had felt impossible for years. She had chosen him, and he had chosen her. And whatever came next, that choice was real. Okay, she said. Take me to the meeting. Let them see what they are dealing with. Something flickered in his eyes. Pride, maybe. Or recognition. The same recognition she had seen the first time he tasted her food and understood that it came from somewhere real. He kissed her forehead. The council meeting was held in a room beneath the main house. Tandy had never been to this part of the compound. The stairs descended 3 levels, past security checkpoints and reinforced doors, into a space that felt like a bunker. The walls were concrete. The lighting was harsh. The furniture was minimal, functional, designed for serious conversations about serious things. 5 men sat around a rectangular table. They rose when Kang Min-ho entered, but their eyes went immediately to Tandy. She felt the weight of their assessment. the calculation behind their polite expressions. She lifted her chin and met their gazes directly. Minho gestured for her to sit in the chair beside his, at the head of the table. She sat. The men exchanged glances but said nothing. "Gentlemen," Minho said, "you requested this meeting. Speak." The oldest of them, a man with silver hair and deep lines around his eyes, leaned forward. His name was Director Beak. Tandy had heard it mentioned in hushed tones around the compound. He had been her father's most trusted advisor. His word carried weight. "Young master," Director Beak said, "we mean no disrespect, but there are protocols, traditions. The woman you have chosen to bring into your confidence is unknown to us. She has no family connections we can verify, no background we can confirm. In our world, that kind of uncertainty is dangerous." Minho's expression did not change. "I am aware of her background. I have investigated it personally. With respect," Director Beak said, "your judgment may be compromised. Affection can cloud perception. We have seen it before." "You have seen it," Minho said quietly, "or you assume you have." The room went very still. Director Beak held his gaze. "I watched your father make decisions based on emotion rather than strategy. We all know how that ended." Tandy felt Minho tense beside her. She reached under the table and touched his hand, a small gesture hidden from the others. He did not look at her, but his hand turned beneath hers and his fingers interlaced with her own. "My father," he said slowly, "made many mistakes. Trusting the wrong people, ignoring the right ones, believing that loyalty could be purchased rather than earned. I have spent 6 years cleaning up those mistakes. I have earned the right to make my own choices." He looked around the table, meeting each man's eyes in turn. "Tandy Mulf is my choice," he said. "She will be treated with the same respect you show me. Anyone who cannot accept that is welcome to leave. I will not hold it against you, but I will not bend on this." Director Beak studied him for a long moment. Then he looked at Tandy. "Miss Mulf," he said, "what do you have to say for yourself?" Tandy felt the attention of the room shift to her. 5 powerful men, all of them waiting to judge her response. She thought about the years she had spent hiding, the years of silence and submission and making herself small. She thought about the girl she had been before Johannesburg, before the debts and the violence and the running. That girl had been brave. That girl had spoken her mind. Maybe it was time to find her again. "I know what I am," she said. Her voice was steady. "I am an outsider. I have no family name that means anything in your world. I have no connections, no power, nothing to offer except myself." She paused. "But I also know what I am not. I am not naive. I am not weak. And I am not here to take anything from any of you. I am here because the man beside me chose to see me when no one else did. He chose to trust me when trust was dangerous, and I chose to trust him back." She looked at Director Beak directly. "You want to know if I can be trusted? Test me. Put me in situations where betrayal would be easy and see what I do. Give me access to information that could hurt this family and watch how I handle it. I am not asking you to trust me based on words. I am asking you to give me the chance to earn it." Silence. Then Director Beak nodded slowly. There was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Not approval exactly, but the beginning of respect. "She speaks well," he said to Minho. "Perhaps your judgment is not as compromised as I feared." Minho's hand tightened around Tandy's. "My judgment," he said, "is exactly what it has always been. I choose carefully, and I protect what I choose." He stood, pulling Tandy up with him. "This meeting is over," he said. "Unless there are other concerns?" No one spoke. He led her out of the room, up the stairs, back into the light of the main house. Neither of them spoke until they were alone in his study with the door closed behind them. Then he turned to her and said, "You were magnificent." She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "I was terrified." He smiled, one of his rare, genuine smiles. Terror and magnificence often go together. He pulled her close. "Thank you for standing beside me." She rested her head against his chest. Thank you for giving me something worth standing beside. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet afternoon light. But peace in the Kang compound was always temporary, and the real test was still coming. Now, before I tell you what happens next, I need to ask you something. Are you subscribed? Because the next part of this story involves a rival who wants Tandy for himself, a betrayal from inside the compound, and a moment where Kang Min-ho has to choose between his empire and the woman he loves. If you are not subscribed, you are going to miss it. Hit that button right now. Turn on notifications. Join this family. Because we protect our own here, and you are one of us now. Let us continue. The rival appeared 2 weeks later. His name was Jang Seo-jun. He was 31, heir to the Jang family's empire, and he had been circling the Kang organization for years, looking for weaknesses, waiting for opportunities. He was handsome in a sharp, predatory way, with a smile that never quite reached his eyes and a reputation for getting what he wanted through charm or violence, whichever worked faster. He came to the compound for a business meeting. Territorial negotiations. A dispute over shipping routes that had been simmering for months and needed resolution before it escalated into something messier. Tandy was not supposed to be present, but Min-ho had asked her to observe from the side room, to watch the proceedings through the one-way mirror, to learn how these things worked. She was watching when Jang Seo-jun walked into the room. He moved like a man who owned every space he entered. His suit was immaculate. His entourage fanned out behind him with practiced precision. He shook Min-ho's hand with the casual confidence of an equal, though everyone in the room knew the Kang family's power far exceeded the Jang family's reach. The meeting proceeded. Numbers were discussed. Territories were mapped. Compromises were proposed and rejected and proposed again in different forms. Tandy watched Min-ho work. He was patient, methodical, never raising his voice, never showing frustration. He made concession appear like generosity and held firm on the points that mattered without ever seeming aggressive. It was a masterclass in negotiation, and she filed away every detail for future reference. Then Jang Seo-jun asked a question that had nothing to do with shipping routes. "I hear you have a new woman," he said casually. "A foreigner, African, they say." Min-ho's expression did not change. "My personal life is not relevant to our discussion." Seo-jun smiled that cold smile. "I meant no offense." He paused. "I am simply curious. We operate in traditional circles. An outsider in such an intimate position is unusual. Some might say risky. Some might say," Min-ho agreed. "Those same people might also focus on their own affairs rather than speculating about mine." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Seo-jun held Min-ho's gaze for a moment, then laughed and raised his hands in mock surrender. "You are right, of course. My apologies. I overstep," the meeting continued. But something had shifted. Tandy could feel it even through the glass. Jang Seo-jun had noticed her existence, and that noticing felt dangerous. She was right to be worried. 3 days after the meeting, she was shopping in Myeongdong. It was her first time leaving the compound alone in weeks. Min-ho had insisted on sending guards with her. 2 men in plainclothes who kept their distance but remained visible. She was browsing a skincare shop when a voice behind her said, "Miss Mulf, what a coincidence." She turned. Jang Seo-jun was standing 3 feet away, dressed casually in a designer jacket and dark jeans. He looked like any other wealthy young man out for an afternoon of shopping, but his eyes had that same cold calculation she had noticed in the meeting. "Mr. Jang," she said carefully. "This is unexpected." "Is it?" He smiled. "Seoul is smaller than people think. We all end up in the same places eventually." She glanced toward the door, looking for her guards. They were outside, visible through the window, watching the shop entrance. Seo-jun followed her gaze. "Your escorts," he said. "They are very professional. Kang Min-ho takes good care of you." She did not respond. He stepped closer. Not close enough to be threatening, but close enough to feel intimate. I have to admit, he said, I was skeptical when I heard the rumors. Kang Min-ho, the cold prince of Seoul, falling for a cook? It seemed too unlikely to be true. His eyes moved over her face, her body, with an assessment that made her skin crawl. But now I understand, he said. You are quite remarkable. Not what I expected at all. She held his gaze. What did you expect? Something smaller, he said. Someone who would disappear into the background. Instead, I find a woman who carries herself like a queen. He tilted his head. No wonder he guards you so closely. If you were mine, I would do the same. She felt anger rise in her chest, hot and sharp. I am not a possession, she said. Not his. Not anyone's. Seo-jun smiled. Of course not. I meant no offense. He reached into his pocket and produced a business card. But if you ever find yourself wanting to explore other options, I would be very interested in conversation. The Jang family appreciates remarkable women. We treat them well. She did not take the card. He placed it on the counter beside her anyway. Think about it, he said. And then he turned and walked out of the shop, disappearing into the crowd before her guards even realized he had been there. Tandy stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding. Then she picked up the card, put it in her pocket, and walked out of the shop. She would tell Min-ho. He needed to know. But some part of her understood that this was just the beginning. Jang Seo-jun had not approached her by accident. He was making a move. And she was the piece on the board he had decided to target. The war was coming. And she was going to be at the center of it. Min-ho's reaction was controlled. Too controlled. Tandy told him everything, sitting across from him in his study, watching his face for any sign of the rage she knew was building beneath the surface. He listened without interrupting. His hands rested flat on the desk in front of him. His eyes never left her face. When she finished, the room was silent. Then he said, "He touched you?" "No," she said. "He just talked. He gave me his card. He did not move." "Show me." She pulled the card from her pocket and placed it on the desk. He looked at it without picking it up. "He came to you in public," he said slowly. "In daylight, where my guards could see him." He delivered his message and left before they could intervene. "Yes," Min-ho nodded. He was not subtle about it. He wanted me to know. He wanted to show me that he could reach you whenever he wanted. Tandy felt a chill run down her spine. What does that mean? It means, Min-ho said, that Jang Seo-jun has decided to escalate. The territorial negotiations were a pretext. He has been watching us for months. Watching you. He picked up the card and looked at it for a moment, then dropped it into the wastebasket beside his desk. He is trying to destabilize me by threatening what matters most. "Me," she said. "You," he confirmed. He looked at her. "I should have anticipated this. I should have kept you closer." She shook her head. "You cannot keep me locked in the compound forever. That is not a life. It is safer. Safer is not the same as alive." He stood and walked around the desk, stopping in front of her. He reached out and took her hands in his. "When I was young," he said quietly, "I watched my father lose everything because he could not protect what he loved. He made enemies of people who should have been allies. He trusted people who betrayed him. He loved a woman who was not strong enough to survive in our world." His eyes met hers. "I promised myself I would never be that vulnerable," he said. "I would never let anyone close enough to become a weakness. I would be iron. Untouchable. Cold." He paused. "Then I met you. And all those promises meant nothing. Mino." He squeezed her hands. "You are not my weakness," he said. "You are my reason. The reason I wake up in the morning. The reason I keep fighting. The reason any of this matters." He pulled her to her feet, close against him. "So when you tell me that someone threatened you," he said, "I do not feel weak. I feel focused. Because now I know exactly what I need to do." She looked into his eyes and saw something there she had not seen before. Nut raj. Not fear. Certainty. "What are you going to do?" she asked. He kissed her forehead. "Whatever it takes," he said. The first strike came 3 nights later. Tandy woke to the sound of explosions. She sat up in bed, disoriented, her heart pounding. Minho was already on his feet, pulling on a shirt, reaching for the phone beside the bed. "What is happening?" she asked. He spoke rapid Korean into the phone, his voice sharp with command. Then he turned to her. "Get dressed," he said. "Now. We are moving." She threw on clothes without asking questions. Within minutes, they were in the hallway, surrounded by guards, moving toward the secure room beneath the main house. The compound was chaos. Alarms were sounding. Staff were running in every direction. Through the windows, Tandy could see flames rising from somewhere near the eastern gate. "The shipment warehouse," one of the guards reported. "Explosive device. Fire is spreading." Minho's jaw tightened. "Casualties?" 3 guards confirmed. "More injured. Secure the perimeter. No one in or out until I give the order." "Yes, sir." They reached the secure room. The heavy door closed behind them with a solid thunk. Inside, screens lined the walls, showing camera feeds from every corner of the compound. Tandy could see the fire burning, the guards rushing to contain it, the flashing lights of emergency vehicles approaching from outside. Minho stood before the screens, his face illuminated by their glow. "Jang," he said quietly. It was not a question. Director Beek appeared on one of the screens, calling in from a secure location. "Young master, we have confirmed reports." The device was sophisticated, military grade. Someone provided the Jang family with resources beyond their usual reach. Minho's eyes narrowed. "Who?" "We are investigating, but there are rumors of a foreign investor. Someone new. Someone who wants to see the Kang organization weakened." Tandy felt her stomach drop. Foreign investor. Someone new. She thought about the men who had driven her from Johannesburg. The network that had traded in her father's debts and her own freedom. The organization that had hurt her and would have done worse if she had not escaped. She had assumed they were behind her. She had assumed she had gotten far enough away that they could not reach her. But what if she had been wrong? She looked at Minho, and he was already looking at her. He saw it in her face. The recognition. The fear. "Later," he said quietly. "When this is contained, we will talk." She nodded. But she already knew what she was going to tell him. Her past had found her, and it was about to collide with his present in ways neither of them had anticipated. "Stop right here. I need you to really hear me. What Tandy is about to reveal changes everything. The people hunting her, the reason she really left South Africa, the danger that has been following her for 3 years, it is all about to come out. And Kang Minho is going to have to make an impossible choice. If you have made it this far into the story, you are one of us now. Prove it. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on that notification bell. Drop a comment telling me you are here, you are watching, you are part of this journey. Because the next part is where the love gets tested by fire. And I promise you, it is going to be worth every second. The truth came out at 4 in the morning. They were alone in the secure room. The fire had been contained. The injured had been transported. The compound was locked down tight. Director Beek and the other council members were handling the immediate aftermath, leaving Minho and Tandy in the quiet beneath the chaos. She told him everything. Not the edited version she had shared before. Everything. Her father's restaurant had been profitable, she explained. Too profitable. It attracted attention from the wrong people. A syndicate that operated across southern Africa, dealing in everything from arms to people. They had offered protection in exchange for partnership. Her father had refused. The debts that followed were manufactured. Fabricated loans with impossible interest rates. Documentation that appeared out of nowhere. Legal threats that made fighting back impossible. Within 2 years, her family owed more than the restaurant was worth. More than their house. More than everything. When her father could not pay, they took Tandy instead. 3 months, she said quietly. She was staring at the wall, unable to look at Minho while she spoke. They kept me for 3 months. They said I would work off the debt. They meant something else. She paused. I escaped before they could do the worst things. But I saw what happened to the other women. I know what I was being prepared for. The room was completely silent. The people who helped me disappear, she continued, they had connections here, in Seoul. They said the Kang compound was the safest place for someone who needed to vanish. No one would look for a South African woman in the kitchen of a Korean crime family. She finally looked at Min-ho. I did not know who you were when I came here, she said. I did not know anything about your organization or your family or any of it. I just knew I needed to be somewhere no one would find me. His expression was unreadable. And now they have found you, she swallowed. It is possible. If the foreign investor director Beek mentioned is connected to the syndicate that took me, if they traced me here, then the attack on the warehouse was a message. Yes, she said. They may be trying to flush me out, or destabilize you, or both. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Come here. She hesitated. Minho. She stood and walked to where he was sitting. He reached up and took her hands, pulling her down onto his lap. His arms wrapped around her, holding her close against his chest. You think, he said quietly, that I am going to send you away. She could not speak. You think I am going to decide that you are too dangerous, that your past is too complicated, that protecting you is not worth the risk. She closed her eyes. He tightened his arms around her. Look at me. She opened her eyes. His face was inches from hers. His eyes were dark and fierce and utterly certain. I do not care, he said. Mino. I do not care what you did before you came here. I do not care who is chasing you. I do not care how dangerous it becomes or how many enemies I have to fight. He cupped her face in his hands. You are mine. That is not negotiable. It is not conditional. It is not something that changes based on circumstances. You could lose everything, she whispered. Your organization, your family, your life. He smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had already counted the cost and decided to pay it anyway. I lost everything that mattered a long time ago, he said. My mother, my father, my childhood, my ability to believe that people could be trusted. He pressed his forehead against hers. Then you walked into my kitchen at 4 a.m, and I found something worth keeping. I am not letting go. She kissed him. It was desperate and fierce and full of all the things she could not say with words. He kissed her back with equal intensity, holding her like he was afraid she would disappear if he loosened his grip for even a second. When they finally pulled apart, both of them breathing hard, he said, We fight together. Whatever comes, we face it together. Understood? Understood, she whispered. Good, he said. Now let me show you what happens when someone threatens what belongs to me. The next 4 weeks were war. Min-ho mobilized every resource at his disposal. Intelligence networks tracked the foreign investors' connections across 3 continents. Security protocols were overhauled. Allies were contacted. Lines were drawn. The investor, it turned out, was exactly who Tandy had feared. A man named Vanderberg, a South African businessman whose legitimate import-export company was a front for the same syndicate that had destroyed her family. He had been expanding into Asia, looking for footholds in new markets. The Jang family had offered him a partnership in exchange for resources to challenge the Kang organization. And part of the deal, apparently, had included information about a woman who had escaped 3 years ago and never been recovered. Vanderberg wanted Tandy back, not for business reasons, for personal ones. She had embarrassed him by escaping. In his world, that kind of defiance could not go unpunished. But he had made a critical miscalculation. He had assumed that Kang Min-ho was like other men, that he would weigh the cost of protecting one woman against the cost of war and make the practical choice, that he would hand her over to preserve his empire. He did not understand that Min-ho had stopped making practical choices the moment he fell in love. The counterstrike happened on a Tuesday. Tandy did not know the details until afterward. Min-ho had kept her at the compound, surrounded by guards, while he handled things personally. She spent the day pacing, watching the clock, fighting the urge to scream at the walls. He returned at midnight. There was blood on his clothes again. More this time. His face was set in hard lines, and there was something in his eyes that she had never seen before. Something ancient and tired and fierce. She ran to him the moment he walked through the door. "Is it over?" she asked. He held her tightly. "Vanderberg is dead," he said. "The Jang family has agreed to terms. Their cooperation with outside investors has been terminated." She pulled back to look at his face. "And the syndicate?" "Will not be pursuing you further," he said. "I made it very clear what would happen if they tried." She did not ask what he had done. She did not want to know. Some things were better left in the dark, but she understood that he had kept his promise. "Whatever it takes. Come," he said. "I need to show you something." He led her through the compound, past the main house, past the garden, to a building she had never entered. It was smaller than the others, more modern in design. He unlocked the door with a code and brought her inside. The interior was beautiful, open and light, with floor-to-ceiling windows and warm wood floors. A kitchen dominated one end, professional-grade equipment gleaming under recessed lighting. A living space occupied the other end, furnished simply but elegantly. "What is this?" she asked. He stood behind her, his hands resting on her shoulders. "I had it built," he said. "For you." She turned to look at him. "For me? You said you missed having a kitchen of your own," he said. "A place where you could create whatever you wanted without answering to anyone." He paused. "I cannot give you back what you lost in Johannesburg. I cannot undo what was done to you, but I can give you this. A place that belongs only to you. A place where you are the master." She stared at him, overwhelmed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "And this," he said quietly. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple but stunning, a single stone that caught the light and fractured it into 1,000 points of brilliance. "Tandy Molf," he said. "I have spent my entire life building walls, keeping people out, protecting myself from the kind of love that destroys men like me." He looked into her eyes. "You walked through every wall I built like they were not even there. You made me want things I had taught myself never to want. You made me better." He took her hand. "I am asking you," he said, "to stay. Not as someone I protect, not as someone I provide for. As my partner, my equal, my wife." She could not breathe. Her vision blurred with tears she did not try to hide. "Yes," she whispered. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, because of course he had made sure it would fit perfectly. He had made sure of everything. Then he kissed her, and the kiss held all the things they had been through. All the pain and fear and fighting. All the nights of uncertainty. All the moments when walking away would have an easier than staying. They had stayed anyway, both of them, together. And that, more than anything, was what made it real. The wedding was small, private, held in the compound's inner garden on a spring morning when the cherry blossoms were falling like snow. Tandy wore white, not a traditional Korean hanbok, though she had considered it. A simple Western gown that flowed over her curves like water, making her look like something out of a dream. Her natural hair was styled in elaborate twists adorned with tiny flowers. She had never felt more beautiful in her life. Minho stood at the altar they had built, watching her walk toward him. His face held that expression she had learned to recognize, the one that meant his walls were down and his heart was visible, and he was trusting her to handle it carefully. She reached him, took his hands, looked into his eyes. The officiant spoke. Vows were exchanged. Rings were placed on fingers. And when Minho kissed her, sealing the marriage, the small crowd erupted in cheers. Director Beek, who had come around considerably since that first council meeting, Mrs. Yoon, who had finally accepted that Tandy was here to stay, the guards who had protected her, the staff who had watched her transformation from kitchen worker to lady of the house. They were all there, witnessing, celebrating. Tandy looked around at the faces of the people who had become her family and felt something she had not felt in years. Home. She was finally home. The news came 6 months later. Tandy had suspected for a few weeks, but she had not said anything. She wanted to be sure. She wanted to have the proof in her hands before she shared it with Min Ho. She waited until evening, when they were alone in the house he had built for her. He was sitting on the couch, reading through some documents related to the organization's latest expansion. She came and sat beside him, tucking her legs up underneath her the way she always did. He looked up. "What is it?" She handed him the small piece of paper. A test result, clear and unmistakable. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at her. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes. His documents fell to the floor, forgotten. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair. She felt him shaking. This man who commanded empires and faced down enemies and never showed weakness to anyone. He was shaking in her arms like a child, a baby, he whispered. "We are having a baby." She nodded against his shoulder. "A baby." He pulled back and looked at her face, cupping her cheeks in his hands. His eyes were bright with tears, something she had never seen before, something she understood was rare and precious. "I love you," he said. "Do you understand? I love you more than I have ever loved anything. And now we are going to have a child. Our child. Yours and mine." She laughed through her tears. "I understand." He kissed her. Gentle this time. Reverent. Like she was something holy. "Thank you," he said against her lips. "Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for staying. Thank you for giving me a reason to be more than what I was." She wrapped her arms around his neck. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, "when no one else did. Thank you for pulling me out of the kitchen and sitting me at your table. Thank you for making me believe I deserved to be there." He pressed his forehead to hers. "You always deserved to be there," he said. "You just needed someone to remind you." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet evening light, dreaming about the future they were going to build together. 9 months later, their daughter was born. They named her Hana. It meant one in Korean and flower in Japanese, and hope in a language that did not have a name but that both of them understood perfectly. She had her mother's eyes and her father's determination. She cried loudly and often and refused to be ignored, which Teddy said was appropriate for a girl born into a family like theirs. Minho held his daughter for the first time in the hospital room, his face soft with wonder, his hands infinitely gentle. He looked at Tandy, exhausted but radiant in the hospital bed, and said, "You did this. You created her." "We did this," she corrected. "Together." He nodded. Together. And that word, more than any other, defined everything they had become. Two people who should never have met. Two people from different worlds, different backgrounds, different everything. Brought together by circumstance, tested by fire, strengthened by choice. They had chosen each other, again and again and again, through danger and doubt and the long, hard work of building a life together. And that choice, made fresh every day, was what made their love real. If you have stayed with me through this entire story, I want you to know something. You are not just a viewer. You are family. You are part of a community that believes in love stories like this. Stories where Black women are the heroines. Stories where powerful men fall completely and totally for women the world tries to overlook. Stories where happily ever after is not just possible, but inevitable. This is Black Soul Romance TV series. We do not just tell stories here. We build worlds where women like us get chosen, protected, cherished, and loved beyond measure. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in something, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And share this video with every woman you know who needs to hear that she is worthy of being pulled to the head of the table. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing. I will see you in the next story.